everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am so honored to be joined by basically our athletic department here today. Athletic Director Kasey Hicks, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I always love being here, Paul.
And of course, we're also being joined by Kenton Alston. Kenton, welcome back to the show. And
Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, we've had you on a few times, and it's always interesting to hear your insight about not only just our basketball teams, but our athletic programs here at Central Penn. So we're going to talk about some of those things, but really why we're here today is to talk basketball. And of course, we're also being joined here by Nightly News sports reporter in his unfortunately final term here at Central Penn College, and honestly probably your last podcast as a student, because this is our last podcast of the term, and we'll make sure to get you back on the air again here in the near future. But Andrew Hunter, thank you so much for joining us, and not only just thank you for joining us, thank you for your efforts this basketball season. The basketball coverage that we had this year was by far, and no disrespect to any previous year, by far our best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so one of the things I want to start off with is back to Andrew here as we get started. And it's simply because, Andrew, I'm curious about your perspective. As you'd covered the teams in years past, it was a little bit different this year because we had the sports broadcasting class. And we really immersed ourselves into Knights basketball really the entire season, but certainly the first half of the season. Tell me a little bit about your impressions from that class and maybe how that helped you in your coverage of the team during this latest season.
I think it was a great class because every time we had a game, every men's basketball game, we would write a rap. We would write like how we improved, how we want to improve, and you would give us feedback about each of those stories. So I think that was a great way to improve.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did do in the class is we had a really a heart-to-heart discussion. It wasn't even like a lecture or anything like that, where we just sat down and we tried to brainstorm different ways that we could improve our own broadcasts. A few of them we tried and worked out really well. A few of them we tried and didn't quite work out as well, but at least we've informed ourselves on what we can do in the future. Things like just buying a microphone and doing and approaching like post-game interviews a little bit differently and better. And that's, to me, the thing that I took away most from the class is everybody had the opportunity to chime in. Some of the things were realistic for us to do. Some of the things maybe not, or maybe more longer-term things. But we also came up with a ton of things like, hey, we need to try this year. And we've got a ton of ideas for baseball that we're going to continue to expand upon. So, Andrew, I give you the utmost credit, not only just being such an instrumental part of that class, but really immersing yourselves. And Andrew got a promotion of sorts this year to sports reporter. I know that that's, to everyone that might not be a huge deal, but for us that is a big deal. We've actually only ever had, Andrew is really the first person that we've designated as a sports reporter along with Blake, and I think that's an honor, so you should be very, very pleased about that. And again, we look forward to your continued work with baseball this season. So
congratulations, Andrew.
Thank you,
Andrew.
So one of the things that I want to talk about today, well, really our main focus is the basketball team. In taking a look at both of the teams, really a tale of two seasons for both of these teams, and unfortunately for the women's team, maybe a different direction than the men. I mean, up front, the men started off only 2 wins. A win at Manor College, a win at home against Manor College, a win at home against Williamson Trade. But only 2 wins go into the break. But in the second half, the men rattled off 6 wins, including a senior night victory against Cheney in one of the most exciting games that I've seen. I mean, maybe not on the scoreboard, it was a 24-point deficit, but gosh, the offensive firepower that was illustrated in that game. Really, the second half of the season for the men, it was almost like a whole different team. So I want to talk to Kenton because obviously you have a very, very close interaction with the team.
Absolutely.
What happened to get that sort of First of all, it was all kicked off by a home game, a 1-point loss against Christendom, which they easily, I don't want to say easily, should have won, but was within their grasp.
Absolutely.
To win, and probably, even though we were on the losing side, the most exciting game that we got to call this year.
Yes.
I will never forget standing up there and I could feel my heart like just beating like crazy because it was such an exciting game. And then from that game, 6 consecutive victories for the Knights. what happened there in the second half? Or maybe do we want to start in the first half? Maybe what were some of the trials and tribulations that the team ran into in the first half?
Well, I would say in the first half, Paul, it was definitely a tough non-conference schedule for sure. So whether it was Division I opponents, Appalachian State, or some of these other NCAA schools that we played against, even though they were tough outings for us, it definitely prepared us for conference play. We knew once we got to conference play that we very well could go undefeated. Like that was a realistic goal and a goal we set in place since day one. We just knew like it was going to be tough to start, but we knew that the beginning of the season would prepare us for the second half, which it definitely showed in that 6-game winning streak.
Aside from the scoreboard against Appalachian State, talk to us about that experience, though, and what it meant to the players to be seen on ESPN. I mean, hey, I know the Nightly News does a good work here, but we're no ESPN. I mean, I don't have an issue saying that. What was it like?
Oh, man, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. They were all wonderful. The staff, everybody, they were very welcoming. They were very just, even from the fans, the student section had a chance to interact with many people on campus, and it was an amazing experience. Even though the scoreboard was, it was as expected. They just beat Auburn the week prior to that in an upset, so we knew it was going to be a tough game. But that's a once-in-a-lifetime experience for our kids, and to be able to play in an atmosphere like that, coming off of a big game for Appalachian State like that, it was amazing, regardless of the score.
And as we go to the second half of the season, like I said, that really got to that point where you started rattling off victory after victory, including 6 games in a row, 4 of which were on the road against tough opponents. A lot of close games in there, including a 1-point low-scoring victory. I would love to hear more about this game on February the 6th at Williamson Trade. Now, when I look at the Knights, prior to that, they'd scored 74, 109, 102, 98, 82, and then 48 in a 48-47 victory against Williamson. What happened in that game? I mean, they obviously managed to win.
Yes.
What was going on with the low scoring output?
Well, I think it was a rough shooting night overall for us. Williamson Trade, I think they're usually an up-tempo team. They like to get a lot of shots up, shoot a lot of threes. But I think they realized that in order for them to keep it close or to keep it a reasonable game and for us, that they had to slow the game down. And they have a great coaching staff. They're wonderful people. But they definitely prepared for that game and slowed the game down. And it came down, shout out to Darius Wallace for the game-winning basket to win that game on the road.
Yeah, Darius Wallace has played really well this year. I was very surprised once he started being the starter. Yes. And I think he really stood out in that Appalachian State game where I think he had a pin block off the backboard.
Yes.
That whoa.
He's
not
phenomenal.
he's not the tallest guy in the world, but he can jump out of the gym.
Absolutely. He's very athletic, and what I love about Darius, he's a great kid, comes from a great family, very respectful, just a hardworking kid. He wins sprints every day at practice. Just one of those type guys he doesn't talk much, but he's going to do what he has to do on the court.
Well, clearly, as we look at the team, the standouts here are 2 folks that unfortunately have played their last game for the Knights in Quadir Allen and Rodney Ross. And again, one of the most memorable experiences that I've ever had calling a game was on senior night when this guy just could not miss and basically put the team on his back.
Yes.
And took him to victory and scoring 43 points a career out.
Yes.
I mean, gosh, what do you think that meant to Rodney in his last game as a Knight to have that showing in front of his family?
Oh, a lot. And that was the key piece, Paul. Like with your family being there, being around the student body like for the last time and being at East Penn for the last time, it was definitely, I'm sure, for Rodney, like a great experience, setting the 3-point record with 10 threes, career high, 43 points. And he very well could have had 50. He sat a lot in the second half. So I thought he played a great game, just shot well, efficient. It wasn't like a bad shooting 40-point effort. Like it was an efficient 43. So I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him that it happened on senior night. And I think that's what happened with the team coming towards the end. Those guys realized that it took more than 1 or 2 guys to win these games and that they had to play together as a team. And during that stretch, I think that's what they did better and improved on.
And I'm sure that's going to be a game that both Q and Rodney really remember for the rest of their lives. And that's part of what's wonderful about college athletics. And I don't want to speak for you, but probably part of the reason that you get into this line of work.
Oh, absolutely. It's any opportunity to work in sports when you're an athlete or former athlete is phenomenal. And then when you see these other guys, you see the Andrews and everybody being successful out on the court and in life, like that's what it's all about, is seeing them experience those moments that myself and Kasey got to experience in our lifetime as well. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about senior night game, and we're talking about Rodney and the accomplishments that he had for his last game, it makes me sit here as we're talking about it and remember my senior night game and what it meant to me. So I'm so happy for Rodney because I know he went into that game like with the reality of this is the last time I might touch a ball in a Knights uniform. How can I leave my mark? And I think he went out there with the mindset of, I want to show what I can do. I know he was aiming for that 3-point school record, and he went out there with a you can't stop me mentality, and he broke that record. And I think all athletes go into that last game. It's such a bittersweet moment. I remember just sitting on the court, looking out at the court my last game, thinking like, what's next? And I gotta embrace these 40 minutes and hold on to every last moment that I can. And I'm sure that was the same for our guys. So for us to be in the administrative spot and watch those guys go through that same emotional roller coaster that is being a student athlete, the highs and the lows, and then those last 40 minutes, it's special. It's really rewarding to see.
Ken, who do you think was probably your favorite moment of the season?
Oh man, my favorite moment outside of senior night and it ending that way. Oh man, favorite moment of the season. For me, it was having those opportunities to play those competitive schools. We had an opportunity to play a Division I school, which was phenomenal. We got an opportunity to play last year's reigning national champions in Penn State Wilkes-Barre. So, like, to have
that was a close game too.
Yes, and we had an opportunity to win that game too. So it was seeing where we stood to those other programs. Like that was what was special to me to know that hey, we're not that far off from a team that won the USCA national championship last year. And that's like promising for our future. So those were the best moments for me, just seeing where we stood against that competition.
And I mean, just one note here. As I look back through the season, there were several games within 10 points that really could have went either way. I'd mentioned the Christendom game, 75-74. Also the Penn State Wilkes-Barre game, 92-84. And then way back to the first game of the season, the loss to Penn State Hazleton by only 6. I mean, a couple balls bounce the Knights' way. I mean, we could be having an entirely different conversation here.
Absolutely, and I would keep in mind too that it was a mixture of a team this year. We had the veteran guys like Rodney and Q, but we also had a new group of guys that were freshmen. It was their first time playing collegiate basketball, so like meshing that together and having those guys work together. I think that's what we saw in the second half of the season. The relationships build and things change where they're used to the college game, but at that point in the season, they were still learning how to deal with adversity at the college level. So it was just great to see that maturity and to see how much they've grew over the season.
And we'll come back to talk about what's ahead for the Knights, but I do want to move on to the Lady Knights, who sort of the polar opposite, if you will, for the Lady Knights. They started off extremely strong and ended up on a slide throughout the end of the season. In fact, they started off not only winning the Penn State Scranton women's basketball tip-off tournament, which is a great credit to them and a great early season accomplishment, but they also won 4 out of their first 5 games. And then even to the middle of the season, they stayed hot, winning a couple of games on the road against the College of Southern Maryland and Trinity Washington, and then came back to start the second half with a very strong win against Penn State Mont Alto. But from there, and unfortunately, they only picked up 2 victories the second half of the season, and much of that from anyone who's watched the games was it just seemed like their injuries devastated the team. Most nights they were only having 6 or 7 players even playing. And look, I don't care how good you are. If you're playing 38 to 40 minutes in a game, you're not going to be as fresh at the end of the game. I mean, it doesn't take any genius to figure that out. But, Kasey, let's start at the beginning of the season with the tournament victory. How did the Knights get off to such a strong start?
I think the seniors of the program are coming back really confident. I mean, our Lady Knights made it to the USCA National Tournament for the first time last season, and they came back this year kind of with that swagger and that confidence to be like, okay, we are a team to mess with. We've been averaging being a top 15 team in the USCAA on a national platform. So the seniors kind of came in and that confidence trickled throughout some of those underclassmen who are making a strong impact for the program. And I think they came out ready to just, prove that they belong there, that they want to get back there, and they came out on fire, ready to show that.
And I mean, I know we're kind of moving ahead here, but no matter what happens, they ended up ultimately going to the ESAC championship game. They won the tip-off tournament. I mean, even though the second half maybe didn't quite go the way they hoped, to have a tournament victory in an ESAC championship berth, at least, is got to be something that the team can build off of going forward. And I think that that's something good. I mean, let's talk about the second half of the season, though. I mean, with only really 2 wins, basically, in their last 10 games or so, what were some of the issues beyond, the lack of bodies out there to take up minutes? What were some of the other issues that you saw in your mind?
I think when we started losing players, and there were several issues. I want to give a quick shout out to Coach King, because what she did this season in her first season with the Knights is remarkable. She's one of those coaches that's teaching something way bigger than basketball, and I think that's where that drop in numbers and the less wins in the second half of the season are kind of coming from. Coach King came in and challenged the girls academically. She challenged them emotionally, mentally, and if they weren't ready to step up to the challenge, she was asking them to step away and focus on the classroom, focus on what they need to do to become a better all-around person, all-around player, and then have that trickle onto the court. So because she was challenging them in so many ways outside of the game, she ended up losing a few kids. But ultimately, those girls that left the team were sitting behind the bench.
Right.
They were still asking to be a part of the program. So for me, it's something where you're seeing growth in those students outside of the lines, off of the hardwood. So Coach challenging that team overall on the academic platform and just overall building young women is really remarkable. And she knew it was going to take a chance to hurt her. I mean, she challenged some of her best players. She didn't care who was the leading scorer, who she needed on that court. She knew it was more important to build young women. And that's what she did. And that's ultimately what hurt us. I think when we lost some of those players, that's when our confidence started to kind of fall. And you saw that in, who becomes the leading scorer, who's going to handle the ball primarily of the time. And that they didn't have the answers to that enough to kind of string enough wins together in the second half of the season. It just took some time.
Well, keeping in mind we do only have a limited time here with you, there was one person that I really wanted to give a shout out to this season. Certainly, people that we've honored here before. Of course, Cindy Bubb, former Nightly News Player of the Year, and we can talk about her senior day as well. Of course, Sydney Green, second on the team in points. But the one I really want to make a point of honoring is Alston Yoder coming in. I'm just going to rattle off a couple things here. Number 1, led the team in minutes. Number 2, the only Knight to start every game this season. Number 3, second on the team in points with 12.6, led the team in rebounds with 9. What impact did Alston Yoder bring to this team this year?
I mean, let's start with she's a freshman. We get her back for hopefully 2-3 more seasons, depending on how quickly she goes through her academic program. But Allie, you don't have to be in the gym in practice every single day to see her work ethic. I'm not in practice every day with this team, and you watch these games and you see this kid. If Coach King asks her to run through a wall, I promise you she's running through a wall. And I think that just, transpires and shows in her numbers and what she's able to put on the stat sheet. And Allie is so much bigger than even those numbers you can rally off. I mean, she is the workhorse, and you can tell she's the heart and soul of that program. I think her ceiling is so high. I said it last year, and I'll try and call it out this year again. Allie returning next year, I think she has an awesome shot of being USCA All-American. She's just an all-around player, and I hope Coach King continues to challenge her to, become even better, and I don't doubt that that's going to happen. But it's just her work ethic. She's special.
Yeah, Allie, I was surprised because she's not the tallest girl definitely in the conference, especially when we played Christian Dome. Mm-hmm. She got a lot of rebounds, and I was very surprised with her work ethic.
Yeah, that's what rebounds are. As a coach, I get upset when we lose the rebounding battle because rebound doesn't take talent. Rebounds heart and effort, and that's Allie. That's why she was able to beat some of those taller girls and some of those quicker girls on the boards, because she just outworked them.
And that's one thing that we had mentioned during a couple broadcasts. Like, she's almost always playing 5, and the way her stature is often she's sort of undermanned versus her opponents. Often she was facing people taller, some different types of abilities, let's just say. And Allison always was up for the challenge. And I think that, again, something that's interesting about her is not only her dedication, but just you could tell her tenacity was just something that helped lead the way for the Knights and gave it a spark that I thought was just so evident when we were watching the game. And again, kudos to her, leading the team in minutes, starting every single game, second in scoring, leads the team in rebounds. And again, to Kasey's point, things that just aren't available on the score sheet. So, of course, I do want to have time to talk about Sydney Bubb, of course, former Nightly News Player of the Year. Maybe on her own stat sheet, maybe not quite as eye-popping as it had been in previous years, but the bottom line is that Sydney was really, to me, the glue that held this team together, and the person who was always motivating her teammates and hitting clutch shots and coming up with loose balls. I mean, without her, it's hard to believe that the season would have gone as well as it did. So talk about not only just Sydney's season, but also her legacy here as she's going to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah. Well, first off, her legacy is too short. I wish she could come back and give us another. I believe she has one more year of eligibility, but she challenged herself academically, and she's looking to move on and get a law degree. So, we're sad to see her go. But honestly, Paul, when I look at the growth from Sydney, and she's been here for 3 seasons, she's gone through 2 different coaches. This is by far the best all-around season I've seen Sydney play. So her growth from her freshman to her junior year is just remarkable. I think what made her special this year is she was a leader for the Knights, and she's a silent leader, but she's the one that makes all the right decisions on the court. What stood out to me this year, Bubb is a 3-point specialist. She's got the outside shot. This year she looked to attack. I mean, she was really attacking the rim, and she was leaving everything out on the court on defense. It was almost like it's that senior mentality, like, hey, this is my last year. I got to make sure to leave it all out on the court for 40 minutes. And Bubb set that tone, and she challenged her teammates to meet her there and leave everything they had on the court for 40 minutes, whether they were playing with 14 girls or they were playing with 6. That's what a leader does.
I want to just interject one thing here, and it was the game against Penn State Schuylkill, which she quickly got 4 fouls and ended up having to play the entire second half due to only having 5 people at that point with 4 fouls. And from about midway through the first half. And I mean, gosh, it was really quite amazing how she was able to not draw another foul, but still play decent defense. And I think that's sort of just a microcosm of who she was and what she brought to the team, just in that one example. And of course, I'm sure there were many, many other examples of that. And of course, we wish Sydney all the best in her future endeavors. And of course, she's always going to have a special place in our hearts because she was former Nightly News Player of the Year, and deservedly so. Well, I want to take some time before we move on to what's the future look like. I want to give Andrew a chance to, throw out a question or two if you'd like to try to sort of wrap a bow on the basketball season.
Kasey, I'm going to ask the same question. What was your favorite part of the women's season?
I think my favorite part of the season, my answer is probably the same for both the men's and women's. I love the bench play. So shout out to Abbee, Breski, and Dylan Bowman. They come and do sports photography at all of our games. Some of my favorite moments is throughout the course of the game, I'm busy. I'm in stats. I'm working, so I don't get to enjoy the moments. And I look through some of the photography that the Nightly News sends over, and I get to see how excited the students get on the bench for, big time plays or effort plays. And those are the type of things that just bring a smile to my face. So for me, seeing the teams kind of come together through adversity is my favorite part of the season. And those pictures that capture that moment when you see like 4 girls standing up on the bench, throwing up their bow and arrows or their 3-point signs and things like that. I mean, seeing that investment in each other, that's the culture we're trying to build in athletics at Central Penn. And when you start to see that come together and you really get that family feel, that's what makes my job worth it. So those are the things I really look forward to. And you did see really bright spots for that for both programs at different times. Now, we could get more consistent with it, so let's throw that challenge out there. We definitely had our ups and downs of pulling together and really buying into that family culture. But we're moving in the right direction, and that's my favorite piece.
Well, I do want to talk about what the future looks like for Central Penn basketball, and I want to start with Kenton. As we look to, the roster of folks that we're going to have, I mean, there's some huge shoes to fill here, not only with Q and Rodney, but also losing other people like Zaheem Lewis, who've been around for quite some time and are a stabilizing force on the team. What can we look forward to for this team losing those big players, but also providing opportunity to others to step up?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity moving into next season. All of our new guys and the guys that will be returning, they're looking forward to that challenge of stepping up and filling those roles. It's hard to fill Q, Rodney's role, even Zaheem. Like, Zaheem's like the perfect teammate. Like Kasey mentioned, he's one of those guys. He's, regardless of whether he's playing or not, he's on the bench. He's encouraging his teammates, just super supportive and working hard every day at practice. But I think moving forward, there's a lot of talent that we have left too, with Jordan Strickland, Riley Young, Darius Wallace. Like, it's a great young group of guys that, and that's just to name a few. There's a lot more that we always felt this whole season. We started the season out with almost 20 players, but we felt like every last one of those players were able to contribute. It wasn't like a big drop-off. It was just buying into that team environment. And I think that now it took a season. They've seen what it takes to win and do it the right way. As Kasey mentioned, like, it takes a team. It takes being supportive on the bench as well and uplifting your teammates. And I think they got that piece. So I think moving into next season, it should be a special season. Like, yes, we'll miss Rodney and Q. They've done a lot for our school, our program, but we're just ready for that challenge. They're ready for that challenge to step up. That's what athletics are all about. Just stepping in and filling those roles, whether it's high school, college. You're ready for those moments. You want to move up. You want to get more time. You want to earn more minutes and things like that. So we got a great group of guys coming back, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next season.
I want to pop in there real quick because I want to give a shout out to Zaheem. You talk about filling those roles. I think the challenge for the men's program is who's going to fill Zaheem's role. You have a handful of guys that can come in and be. Everybody wants to be a scorer, especially in men's sports. That's the thing is, I'm the scorer. Give me the ball. Let me go to work. But who's going to be that guy on the bench? Who's going to be that guy making the team laugh on the bus? Who's going to be that guy, clapping their hand, putting their hands together, standing up. Challenging the other guys at practice. And that's what Zaheem was. I mean, he was the one who could add like the humor and add that just love for the game. So, Rodney and Q, they'll be tall shoes to fill, but I think the secret for the men's team is finding those role players that are going to come in and really embrace being that heart and soul without the shine. That's a tough role to find and replace. So, Z is going to be missed, and hopefully we have somebody ready to step up to that challenge, because I think that's the bigger challenge of the two.
Two sport athletes departing us,
right.
in Zaheem Lewis and Sydney Bubb as well.
Right.
As we look at the women's team, Kasey, what are some things that we can take away moving to the next season? Hopefully, I'm sure Coach King will say for our first priority is bringing some players in so we don't have to, play 40 minutes every single game.
Yeah.
But beyond that, what do you think is the goal for next year?
I mean, you look at our roster. We obviously are losing Bub, which is a big loss for us. I mean, she brought the leadership. She brought, the hard work. But we have majority of our roster back, which is promising for the Lady Knights. Kenton has played a big role in helping our coaches just with recruitment strategies and getting them out there and getting them the support that they need. So Coach King has really hit the ground running already with recruitment. She talks a big game. We sat down for dinner after the ESAC championship game talking about next year. What do we have to do? What's next? And she's really impressed with her incoming class so far. So I think, and I trust Coach King is bringing in those pieces that are going to pull this program together even further. Anything less than another ESAC championship appearance is probably a loss in my book. And I think these women continue to keep their sights on that USCA national tournament because they're building something special. I think they're going to get back there within the next 2 to 3 years for sure.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to tell both of you and, of course, our audience that it means the world to us that we get to do basketball. I mean, it is so much fun to be there. Of course, a win is always a little more fun and easy to swallow than a loss. But win or lose, we are out there to support you guys, and the numbers that we got, the viewership that we got, the accolades that we've gotten from covering sports is just really remarkable. But we couldn't do it without you being there and allowing us this opportunity. So I want to personally thank you on behalf of the Nightly News. Of course, I want to thank you, Andrew, for doing such an amazing job during your time in covering sports here. And you'll still be helping us out with at least through the baseball season. So we absolutely 100% appreciate that. And of course, we're looking forward to being out in F&B Field with you.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. Again, I want to thank Kenton, Alston, Kasey, Hicks for coming and talking, wrapping up the season here with basketball. Thank you so much for doing what you do and keep on doing it so we can keep on being out there with you with the Nightly News.
Yeah, shout out to you guys. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, Andrew. We'll definitely miss you, Andrew, so hopefully we'll have you back a little bit more. But thank you guys so much for all you do for athletics and for our programs.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew's not going anywhere soon. It's on record now, so it's official. I spoke it into the microphone. Andrew's going to be around for a while, but Paul, you know how much I value you and how much you increase what we're able to do with the athletic department here. It started with a tiny little dream for you, something that you wanted to just dive into, and look at what it's become. So you should be real proud of what you've been able to do. And obviously, I know it takes a team, the students that you got to buy into this process. It's special. And I'm very grateful for what you guys are able to bring to athletics and help us elevate. We wouldn't be able to reach as many people as we do without you. So thankful.
Well, it's absolutely our pleasure. If you would have asked me years ago what my dream job would be, it would be calling sports. And even as a small part of my job, I get to do that and on a wonderful platform. So thank you. All right, well, hey, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. For Nightly News sports reporter Andrew Hunter, and from Knights Athletics, Kasey Hicks and Kenton Alston, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Nightly News correspondent Abbee Breski with the winter 2024 episode of the Nightly News Brief. This news podcast features audio versions of stories from our student reporters, articles by Andrew Hunter, Nick Hogan, Tam Boy, Noah Lopez, and Professor Michael Lear-Olympi are featured in today's episode. Central Penn's Black History Month calendar has featured remembrances and celebrations of Black Americans' personal and collective triumphs over discrimination and of their cultural, scientific, and other contributions to the nation and to the world. This year, the college's Black Student Union has promoted information about Black Americans through signs on campus, postings on the Central Penn app, and displays on video screens in college buildings and in other ways. According to Elijah Tinson, Central Penn success coach, director of the PACT and first-year experience programs, said, quote, "If you want to try to do events that are going to not only be entertaining and fun, but are also going to kind of educate, and as long as you're willing to do that, and places are willing to do that, it makes it for a more cohesive thing," end quote. One of those events occurred in February when students visited the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Another event occurred recently in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater when the BSU showed the movie Selma about the civil rights march Martin Luther King Jr. led to the state capitol in Montgomery in March of 1965. The main event of Central Penn's Black History Month observances was luncheon in the Conference Center. Chad Lassiter, executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, was the luncheon's keynote speaker. 6 awards, each named for key people in African American history, were presented to students during the luncheon. Nightly News reporter Sarah Walters received the Dr. C. Dolores Tucker Award for the community service for her work with Colleges Against Cancer and other local organizations. The Central Penn College Knights basketball team was victorious against the Cheyney University Wolves in their season finale at East Pennsboro Area High School on February 22nd, winning by a score of 96-72. Before the game, the Central Penn College Athletic Department honored 3 senior knights: guard Zaheem Lewis, guard Rodney Ross, and 1,000-point scorer forward Quadir Allen. Ross was the Nightly News Player of the Game with a career-high 43 points to go along with 7 rebounds and 3 steals. Another key player for the Knights was Jordan Strickland, who had 24 points and 12 rebounds. The Knights finished the season with a record of 9-18, which included a 6-game winning streak in the second half. While the Knights season concluded on Saturday, fans of the team will remember the impact of the 3 departing seniors. The Nightly News has won second place in sports photography for student publications at Pennsylvania colleges or universities with fewer than 10,000 students. It is the 6th time in 5 years that the Nightly News has won a Pennsylvania News Media Association Keystone Media Awards honor. Recent corporate communications graduate Dylan Bowman won the second-place prize in this year's student contest for his photograph of Central Penn baseball player Angel Mercado Ocasio springing into the air to catch a throw as a player from Williamson Trade slid in to steal second base. Bowman said, quote, "It was an amazing honor to win a second award from the PNA, especially for one of my favorite baseball photos. I look forward to continuing to capture moments like this one that leave a lasting impression on the Central Penn community for as long as the college will have me." This is Bowman's second consecutive win in the same category and also for a baseball photo, and also against Williamson. Esports is a relatively new sport in which competitors play video games against one another in competition games, often in leagues, at colleges and universities, and professionally. Many games implement some form of esport or competitive mode by which players can test their skills. Some popular games include League of Legends, Rocket League, Counter-Strike, and Call of Duty. Central Penn is no stranger to this trend, and the college has a gaming club and an esports team that competes with other colleges. The team has brought home trophies in these competitions, including one for coming in as the Rocket League 2022 National Champions, and one for securing a Final Four placement in a Call of Duty Vanguard tournament that year. Most recently, the esports team racked up a 2-11 record, but team members have a strong desire to continue improving. The 2024-2025 season began on February 7th. The team's trophies are in the Knights Gaming Lab, ATEC 304. Michael Pico of Central Penn's Information Technology Department and Donnie Lewis of the Central Penn College's Admissions Department coached the teams. The CPC film series returned to the Capitol Blue Cross Theater on February 2nd, fittingly with a showing of the Bill Murray classic, Groundhog Day. Professor Paul Miller, who has hosted 3 prior CPC film series events, returned to discuss this iconic 90s comedy. This one, however, was special, as this term's event happened to fall on Miller's birthday, Groundhog Day. The perfect timing of the CPC film series and Miller's birthday made the showing of the film almost an obligation. Groundhog Day follows television weatherman Phil Connors on a trip to western Pennsylvania to do an in-person report on Groundhog Day, and Punxsutawney Phil, and with his rude demeanor and constant attitude, manages to make almost everyone with whom he interacts with dislike him. The story takes a turn when Connors ends up in a perpetual time loop on Groundhog Day of the year and must find a way to break the loop by becoming a better person. Miller said that a message from the film is that happiness in life comes from being there for others. Miller said, quote, "This film paints a picture that illustrates that living life is never about us. We exist to live for others," end quote. His joy in sharing the movie with loved ones underscores the enduring value of sharing passions with others. And after 7 years of the CPC film series, and this one being one of the most successful to date, I'm sure there will be future opportunities for those in the Central Penn College community to share their love of film too. This has been Abbee Breski with the Winter 2024 episode of the Nightly News Brief.